And we do welcome you in live to our latest Locked On Red Sox on the Locked On Red Sox YouTube channel. Steve Lennox once again in for Gabby Hurlbut. We're going to be talking about episode number 2 of the Netflix documentary. And we're also going to talk with Pam Kenn, 24 plus years working in the Boston Red Sox front office. Pam joins us. We'll talk about her career with the Red Sox. We'll get her thoughts on the Red Sox Netflix documentary. You are right where you need to be. You are Locked On Red Sox.
You are Locked On Red Sox Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Boston, on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Steve Lennox, host of the Locked On Red Sox postcast during the regular season and hopefully next October as well in the Major League Baseball postseason, filling in for Gabby Hurlbut again this week and next week. Gabby getting married this past weekend. Gabby and David Malgenian, the newlyweds. Gabby's going to be back week after next. As I touched on, Pam Kenn, long career in the Red Sox front office, is going to join us in just a few moments. Our latest Locked On Red Sox brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. Inviting you to participate with today's Locked On Red Sox episode. It's simple. If you're with us on the Locked On Red Sox YouTube channel, you can join the conversation by hitting the comment button. Want to hear your thoughts on the Netflix documentary? Are you watching it? Have you watched all 3? Have you watched 1? Have you watched the first 2? I've now watched the first 2. Episode 1 for me, great. Episode number 2 for me, great times 2. It really was. We'll get into that in just a few moments. Again, Pam Kenn is going to join us as well on our latest Locked On Red Sox, available wherever you get your podcasts. You can also hit me up on the X if you're listening on the podcast. Want to share your thoughts on 2004 and the World Series as the Red Sox picked up the World Series win, their first in 86 years over the St. Louis Cardinals. And on this day 20 years ago, it was Game 2 of the World Series at Fenway Park. Red Sox won that one, traveled to St. Louis, up 2-0 in the series, won the next 2 to capture the World Series title. And who knew that it would be 4 from then on, right? Pam Kenn has 4 Red Sox World Series rings. We're going to talk about her career in just a few moments. So again, Netflix 3-part docu-series on the 2004 Red Sox. I said when we talked with Michael Lynch on Wednesday from CMEDS.com, curious, was Curt Schilling going to be on a couch or in a chair talking about 2004? Well, Curt Schilling, I guess you could say, debuted in episode number 2. Had some great thoughts. It goes all the way up to the Nomar Garcia-Parra trade in 2004 at the trade deadline. Now in episode 3, you're going the rest of the way. Veritek, Alex Rodriguez, it chronicles into that offseason from 2003 into 2004. Manny going to be traded. John Lester going to be traded. Nomar Garcia-Parra, a big part of it, going to be traded. Kevin Millar, of being on WEEI radio at that point in time, and, who do you basically asking in that present day of 2004 of, who would you want, Manny or Alex, basically Nomar or Alex Rodriguez. And he said Alex Rodriguez. And present day, 2024, in the conversation of like, all right, maybe Nomar did have cause to be upset with my comments on the radio. And they had it out. Kevin Millar shared after that interview on WEEI radio in Boston in 2003 during the offseason as Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer are trying to work a deal for Alex Rodriguez. We know how that all played out, and that was played out in episode number 2 of the Netflix documentary. But they had it out. Nomar Garcia-Parra basically saying, what do you mean you want Alex Rodriguez in a Red Sox uniform and not over me? And again, it flashed back to Kevin Millar, present day. There was an interesting one where it was basically, what's next? What else is going to happen? And then, boom, a picture of Alex Rodriguez. And there he was, sort of signing 3 years and 3 miserable years in Texas, although he made a ton of loot, but didn't work out, ended up with the New York Yankees. And it takes you right to Nomar Garcia-Parra in that trade where he went, 4-team trade, where he went from Boston to the Chicago Cubs. And Nomar Garciaparra saying, basically, at that point in time, this is my organization. I wanted to be here all the way through. And I thought about that after episode number 1 of, I love the NESN analysts, whether on Game with Dave O'Brien or in studio, Tom Caron and Adam Parolin during the season. Those guys are great. But Nomar Garciaparra, really, if he'd spent his entire playing career at the Red Sox, he'd be involved with the Red Sox organization in some way present day. That to me is a no-brainer. Again, if you want to share your thoughts on the doc, you're with us on the Locked On Red Sox YouTube channel. Feel free to hit us up. We're waiting for Pam Kenn from the Boston Red Sox organization joining us here in just a few moments. But if you have your thoughts and you're with us, Locked On Red Sox YouTube channel, hit the comment button, join the conversation. Pam is going to join us in just a moment. Pam, and then we're going to talk about Game 2 of the World Series, and we'll also talk about the Netflix documentary also in episode number 2 as well in just a moment. That's all coming up next. Locked On Red Sox YouTube channel presented by FanDuel. FanDuel, proud sponsor of Locked On Sports. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with a $200 bonus bet guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Well, an absolute privilege to welcome in Pam Kenn, 24 plus years with the Boston Red Sox organization. And Pam, first off, thank you so much for taking a couple of minutes with us. You have a tremendous story. And I learned first about you, I think it was September 27th. So the final Friday of the regular season, watching the Red Sox game, Dave O'Brien and whoever was in the booth that night on NESN with Dave, talking about you. And you went out there and threw out the ceremonial first pitch. So present day, you can find out about a person immediately. I did go to your LinkedIn page. I didn't Google. I just went to LinkedIn. 24 plus years, Boston Red Sox organization. My first and only hard-hitting question is this. Did you lose sleep the night before thinking about throwing out that ceremonial first pitch on September 27th?
I didn't lose sleep, but I would say the 30 minutes before, I was totally freaked out. I was like, I'd rather they hand me the mic than have me throw this pitch right now. But there's a lot of practice. I had my son warmed me up. My husband warmed me up. So I was ready to go, but I was very nervous for sure.
So was there a player? Was there a coach? I was thinking, and I'm thinking a few days ago, what would Terry Francona have said? But was there anyone who actually gave you, a final thought or words of encouragement as you went out in front of the pitcher's mound?
So I like to stand in the dugout. If ever there's a pregame ceremony happening, I'm usually never actually involved in it. It's someone that I'm sending out there for whatever reason. And so I like to stay in the dugout. I stand down there with like Alex Cora and a couple of coaches. I don't know. I sort of feel comfortable there. And Alex has been a friend for a long time. So I was just talking to him, and I had no idea that Alex was going to be the one to catch my pitch. I hoped so. I sort of thought he was the perfect person to do that, but I didn't know that. And he's like, "How you doing?" And I was like, "I'm totally freaked out." And so they sort of took the pressure off. I did get a lot of advice. There was a lot of throw high, don't bounce it. And I said, I couldn't have cared less if I bounced it. Bouncing it was not my issue. I just didn't want to go sideways. I like had this 50-cent thing in my head, and I didn't want to have like some sort of yip situation happening where it just like I airmailed it in the wrong direction. So bouncing it, I would have been okay with, but it all worked out.
So acknowledging, and we're going to touch on your career, you wrap up 24 plus years with the Red Sox organization, senior vice president, community, alumni, and player relations with the Red Sox organization. With that, another on social media, on X, you shared, I think your husband and some other people put a video together, Jim Rice, Luis Tiant.
Yes.
It looked like a golf cart because I've been to spring training in Fort Myers. It looked like a golf cart at spring training, those two just going back and forth. And then the passing of Luis Tiant as well. And when I introduced myself last week and you responded, it was, hey, busy week with Luis Tiant. Can you just touch on that relationship, because that goes well beyond just alumni relations?
Luis Tiant specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've known, just from the nature of the job, as you mentioned, I started 24 years ago. So I started in 2000, and we were a much smaller organization. And my role was on the PR side. I worked for a man named Dick Brashani, and his connection, he had been a PR person turned historian type. And so among some of my responsibilities for him, which included some stat keeping and things like that, was establishing and further strengthening relationships with former players. So Louis, before that, we hadn't won yet. We hadn't won the World Series since 1918 at that point. So it was the biggest names at that time were the 75 guys, the 67 guys, the 86 guys. And a lot of those guys stayed locally after they played. Louis, he was in Georgia for some period of time, but he really never left. And, once he was done playing the game. And so they're around all the time. Those guys were around a bunch. And just over the years, we had Louis do a lot of stuff because he was always up for doing something. Eventually, he had a contract with the team as an ambassadorship. So I was the one who helped sort of execute that. And he was just part of the day in and day out fabric. And so I think that important part of my job, what I try to do well at my job, was to establish the relationships and just get into each other's lives and get to know each other. So I learned a lot from Louis. He was a good man. He taught me a lot about life, about respect, about family. And so, but that was a tough loss for everybody.
So as you go through the funeral last week, was there someone that perhaps had comments on Luis Tiant, observations on him that made you just sort of think about the man in a different way?
So full disclosure, I was not at the actual funeral. I was at the wake.
Okay.
I was at my son. I'm a hockey mom. I say that in the loosest possible term. I'm not a ranting, raving hockey mom, but I am the mother of a hockey player. So I had to take him to Waterville Valley, New Hampshire, for a tournament. So unfortunately I had to miss that. I was actually, this is name droppy, but I was texting with Peter Gammons afterwards because I heard he did a wonderful job. And he was telling me that the turnout was incredible and the emotion in the room was just sort of not surprising because of who Louis was, but when you see it, and I believe Jason Veritek, he had actually asked me the day before about going. So it was certainly a star-studded situation. I think the common thread for someone who, like I said, I wasn't there, but in the conversations leading up to it and since, was that he was so kind to everybody. And I mean, I just had an email exchange with the woman who runs the hotel that he stayed at for whatever reason. When he was in Boston, he lived in Maine, but in recent years, if he came down here overnight, he would stay in Braintree. And I talked to the woman who runs the hotel there, and I was just saying, wrapping up some business and also saying, I'm sorry, because you must have known him really well too. And she wrote the loveliest note about how he became family and how wonderful and loving and generous he was. So his legacy will last a long time.
So thank you for sharing that. Looking, again, going back to your LinkedIn page.
My LinkedIn page needs some work. I gotta work on that. So we'll get there though. Now that I'm sort of riding off in the sunset, I'll revamp my LinkedIn page. But I'm glad
there you go.
Much worse.
So as you're starting out your Red Sox career, and we go present day to us talking now. I mean, you couldn't have written this the way it played out for you over the course of your career. A lot of different titles and elevating in the organization, ownership change, 4 World Series rings. You have them. Today, and we'll get into, today, the 20th anniversary of was Game 2 at Fenway Park and going to St. Louis. But what would be the first chapter when you do sit down? And this is me prompting you to do it at some point in time, because I'll be the first to do it. You can see the books in the background. I'm a reader. What would be the first chapter as you started, day one going into Fenway Park as an employee?
When I started, it was my official start day was June 1st of 2000. And I had my boss at the time, Bresh, had me come in a couple days earlier just to get the lay of the land. But one of the things, I mean, literally back then I was literally cutting newspaper articles out and taping them into a book. Or it was sort of the beginning of being able to take them from online and cutting them and pasting them on a server. So part of the job was cutting the newspaper articles and throwing them out into the recycling bin. Well, I mean, it's such an old ballpark, but even then the offices were so old, and there was this trash room that you'd go to, but the doors would slam behind you. It was just, one of those self-closing doors. So you go in, maybe hold a leg in the door, open the bin, throw the newspapers, whatever. Well, that day, for whatever reason, the door shut behind me, and I was stuck in this triangle room. And so I was sort of freaked out. I was like, I don't have my phone. I can't call somebody. I was almost to the point where I was resorting on like knocking on the door and yelling. And I didn't even know who to yell for, honestly. And so, but I turned, and it was this oddly shaped like triangle room with like a little itty bitty hallway. And there was another door. So I opened the door. I was lucky. I was glad it opened. I opened it. I was in the grandstand, and I was like, holy smokes. Like I think I didn't quite realize that the offices were like in the park, and I opened it. I was like, this is awesome. So, so yeah, like day one, I was like, wow, this is different. This is something different.
If you could sit down over the years, people in and out of the organization, if you could sit down with people who have not been with the organization for a handful of years, let's say, previous your last 5 years, who would some of those be? We'll give you 3 dinner guests.
So people that I worked with, or
just that, sort of, involved in the organization, but no longer involved in the organization, perhaps just people that, you haven't seen in a while.
So, I mean, unfortunately, over the years, as we just started talking about Luis Tiant, a lot of people have passed away. And some of the people I have had dinner with. So, I would say someone who I really loved and taught me about life and how to let things roll off your back and be a good person was Lou Gorman. Mr. Gorman, to me, I think he was, previously a GM before Dan Duquette. And by the time I got there, he was sort of just almost like a emeritus GM type, really just a goodwill ambassador. And he was so warm and lovely and self-deprecating and just humble, and just someone who I went to dinner with him and his wife one night. He treated me like a kid, like his daughter. And again, it was so small then. So it was easy to do that. And he had written a book, and it took him forever to write this book. He was handwriting it in yellow legal pad with like a blue felt tip pen, and I'd type it. And, so we went to dinner. Long story short, we went to dinner, and someone came up to the table and criticized him, and sort of like backhanded compliment, like, "Hey, Lou, nice to meet you. I read your book, and I have to tell you, there's a lot of mistakes in there. You got a lot of stuff like factually wrong." And his wife was seething, like you could see it, like the smoke was coming out of her ears. And he put his hand on her hand and was like, "Now, Mary Louise, it's okay. Not everyone's going to agree with you." And then he's like, "Oh, so he's having this conversation with this man who interrupted our dinner to sort of insult him. And he just handled it with such a manner, young me I was probably 23, 24 at the time. I was pissed, and I was feisty. I'm a little feisty. I was more feisty then. And I was sort of aggravated, and he just sort of smoothed out the situation. And I was like, well, I could learn something here. Other than that, there's just been a million. I can't even, some of them are just still people in my life, like Terry Francona, Tim Wakefield, Stacey Wakefield, those types. We've really been lucky. It's probably too many to name.
So I'm glad you mentioned Lou Gorman's book. I'm going to name drop for the first time. And
okay.
He was a minor league pitching coach. I was in Wilmington in the Carolina League as a broadcaster. After 2004, Wilmington parted ways with the Kansas City Royals, and for 2 years, a Red Sox affiliate in the Carolina League. So year one, do you know the name Arthur Ace Adams?
Yeah.
Do you know Ace?
Yeah. Ace Adams. Yeah.
So he was the pitching coach. So yep. I'm on the bus as the broadcaster for the Wilmington team. Year 1 of 2 with the Red Sox. And I have Lou Gorman's book.
Oh, high and inside.
Ace took it, let him borrow it, Still waiting to get it back. It's not up here behind me right now. So I this is all tongue in cheek, but it was just, I was enjoying it. And on the bus,
Yeah.
he's like, I want to read that. And
Yep.
I thought, okay, after I'm done, I'll give it to you. He's like, no,
Yep.
we got it. We're going to wherever.
No. Yeah.
I'm going to take that. I'm like, I want it back. Yeah. I never saw it again.
Well, maybe I'll lend you my copy.
I think I have it right. When you throw out that ceremonial first pitch, your son, you mentioned your son and daughter, were those the one they were the ones who went out and greeted you? Yes.
Yes.
How are they reacting? I mean, I would imagine they had perks, lots of perks.
Oh, please.
Maybe they still exist in the future. Maybe some go away, but how are they reacting to mom not being a part of the organization?
Such a good question. First of all, I do want to say that was 100% Alex's idea to have my kids out there. He was asked to catch the first pitch and he grabbed my kids and pulled them out there. So
that's Alex Cora.
Yeah, I mean, yes, and just the best. And just such a meaningful thing that I wouldn't have even thought of, and it just added so much more to the thing. My daughter, so I had been like working on this with them for the year. I've been sort of easing them into talking about it around them and or ways, and then finally, because I was like, it's going to be hard to tell them. My daughter, totally fine. She was just like, all right, what are we doing next? Like, oh, and how can I be involved? So she was she loves going to Fenway Park, but she loves going to Fenway Park to see my friends Raquel and my friends Abby. And like Nate, like she knows she wants to see the people in the front office and get candy and gifts and get hugs. She couldn't care less about the sport. My son was pissed. Yeah. I mean, he cried and so this was like months and months ago. So I knew we had the rest of the year to get the real perks, like the key to the door and having an office and all that stuff. But I also said, I'm like, honey, I'm sure for life we can still get tickets, but also we can just buy them. But he is now at this point, he's so far beyond it that the other day he said to me, I like when we go to Fenway Park because you and Dad always seem to run into people you know. I'm like, run into people I know. I still work there. So yeah, so it's been a roller coaster, but I think they're okay. And they're kids, so they like the fame of it all, the celebrity all. So there's still people I'm in touch with that they get to cross paths with. So I mean, we're watching the comeback, and they know so many of the people involved. And is that Johnny? Is that Mr. Nixon? So I think while it'll be weird when it's official, I think they've sort of gotten into it okay.
So again, Pam, I'm going to go back to your LinkedIn page, but you did share recently you were part of the Babson Women in Business Club and as a speaker and welcome. And I was that last week?
Yes. Yep.
You mentioned your daughter, 24 plus years as a woman who tremendous success and tremendous success as part of a bigger tremendous success. How has your role as a woman in sport evolved over the years where the respect is there early on? Obviously, you're having dinner with Lou Gorman, as you said, for 23, 24 years old. You're doing these things. But how has the responsibility, how has it evolved for you over the years as a woman in sport and talking to young women about their opportunities that they may be presented with in the future?
Yeah, it certainly has changed a lot for sure. I mean,
in many ways for the best, right? 100%.
For sure. Yeah. And I think when I was young, again, like the organization was so small and I wouldn't even say I thought I stuck out as a woman then in the organization because I did feel like I had a lot of women coworkers. So, but it was when I started growing and being more focused in the clubhouse and traveling with the team and things like that, where there was times I was the only woman on the plane or in the room or in the, so, and that was interesting. I think I was given a lot of respect or earned a lot of respect pretty quickly with the players. The players actually were almost never an issue. Manager never, well, I won't say the manager was never an issue. I would say of the many years I was there, probably 1 year a manager was an issue. But as far as women, I think you get sort of put in a bucket at times. Like you get this, you are the logistics, the tickets, the credentials person. And if I want to know baseball stuff, or if I want to have a real baseball conversation, I will go to the man in the room. I think because when I was the leader of the department, they came to me just because I was the leader of the department, and you want to probably, a lot of people like to go to the number one person before they go to the other people. But when I was sort of in the middle, I definitely got looked over for things. I was even by my coworkers, sometimes even by people in my own department years and years ago, it was like, you can write the credentials, but you can't walk a player from point A to point B to go on this interview. And I was like, or media wouldn't come to me. They'd go to them, and then it would trickle down to me. And I remember one day it was so busy that the boys couldn't do everything themselves. And so they were like, we trust you to take Tim Wakefield from point A to point B. I was like, well, thank you. I'm pretty sure Tim Wakefield is the most self-reliant person there is, but okay. And so I did have those kind of things where I was just like, what's the deal? Like I've been here a long time, but it's changed a lot. It still exists, not for me as much. I think I've sort of built my own way, but I see it happen all the time where you have a man and a woman in similar situations, and you get sort of put in a bucket. But the sheer number of women is incredible. The number of women throughout sports, not just the Red Sox, in high positions is nice. I actually think my daughter's 10, she'll be 11 in December, and I think she really doesn't even get it. Like, I don't even think she knows that what I've done as a woman in sports is semi-cool. I think it's just like, it is what it is, like, why wouldn't I be who I am? I'm a person who she loves. Like so that's kind of nice too. But sorry to go back to the original question. I like speaking to women. I like to help them find their way. I don't know that I'm even coaching them as much on the male female thing as much as I am just trying to help them figure out, regardless of gender, what the best path is for success, and some things that they can take home with them to be on the right path with a sports organization.
So was there a defining moment where there was an acceptance on certain levels as you continue to elevate? And like you said, you had that top position, so they were coming to you.
Have you read the Francona book?
I'm reading it right now.
Okay.
I picked it up. I picked it up weeks ago at a used book. Our library here in Brantford, Connecticut, has every fall. I love it. I'm at the end of the 2005 season when team was eliminated by the White Sox. It's fantastic. It's outstanding.
So that book came out in like 2012. So it was far after I had this moment that you're speaking of, like that moment of whatever. But in the book, I think this is a classic embodiment of, okay, I've been accepted. There's in the back, there's an index of like, Millar, comma, Kevin, pages, blah, blah, blah. Well, it says my maiden name, Ganley, comma, Pam. I wish I had it in front of me. It's probably my bookshelf, but it says like Ganley, comma, Pam, Francona and the mooning of. And so it goes on, and you go to that, and there's a story about, I walked in the clubhouse as in between a doubleheader. Tito was in his office messing around with like Theo and probably Ben Charrington or something like that. And he didn't know, I like came in the room at the exact wrong time, and he was like mooning Theo. And I was like, oh my God. And, it was in the book, it goes on about how I was horrified. He was horrified. But it was just a funny moment that, and again, it's documented, it's well documented. So I'm not telling tales out of school, but it was one of those things, like, even though they happened, I feel like if it was someone else, if I hadn't already established some sort of like great rapport, that it would have been a much bigger deal. But I felt like being in a clubhouse all the time, where it's their home, it's their home away from home. They're there more than they're in their own homes. You sort of have to get comfortable fast. And again, the players, 90 times out of 100, the players were very welcoming and kind.
I have not gotten to that part in the book yet.
Oh, please.
That's
yeah.
I've now watched the first 2 episodes, and you shared an email of your son had, you guys had a showing of it, and he'd already seen it, but yesterday when it was on, when it debuted on Netflix, he was there. I think you said he was in his Red Sox jersey. So I'm through the first 2, and I'm filling in here for Gabby Hurlbut this week next, and it's all guess for me. I'm not going to talk about trading Tristan Casas or anyone yet. They can do that, in another month or so when Gabby's back. Yeah. So these are the conversations I've enjoyed so far this week and next week as well. But I did think of you in episode number 2 when Alex Rodriguez has his press conference with the Yankees, and there's Rick Cerrone, and he's yelling at the media. He's yelling at the media. Yeah. And, Terry Francona is now going to his first spring training in 2004, and he documents it in the book of, you're learning the Boston media. What part of the Boston media's perception is legitimate? Where do they not get a fair shake?
It's changed over time. I think, I think whenever you're in a situation where you're in between 2 groups of people who fundamentally don't see eye to eye on some things, it can get tense. But the one thing that's always bothered me when players say it, and I will adamantly argue with them on this, is when they say the media wants us to lose. And, the media is rooting against us. They want us to lose. I'm like, that's so stupid. Like, I get that everyone thinks negativity sells. And there's players I've said this to who are cranky people. And I've said, you think they want to cover you when you lose like that? Do you think that's fun for them? That is not fun. You can see it with just the feedback about the comeback, the Netflix series is everyone wants to be a part of something special, and winning is fun for everybody. And I don't care. I mean, even Dan Shaughnessy, it is much more fun and much easier to cover a team who's winning, who's doing historic things, because the players are easy to talk to. The games, it's not so tense. Everyone's in a better mood. So I would think like this perception that they want the team to lose is silly. And it's really, and in fairness, do I think that's true of everybody? I'm sure there's plenty of media members out there who feel differently. And again, like the negativity sells kind of thing, and it makes for better talk radio and all that stuff. But yeah, I just the idea that they're rooting against people is tough. I think you forget that they're there day in and day out. They're away from their families except as much as everybody else, except they're not flying on charters. They're taking commercial flights, and it's just baseball's tough. And I think so. Yeah, I think there's just this little bit of misperception of that. And I do think there are really some strong relationships between players and media too. I think they help each other out a lot. I think there are times everyone just thinks media is burying them. I do think there's times that they help them. And but again, on the other hand, it can be very contentious sometimes. And I always felt it was my job to make it as less contentious as possible.
I'd like to go through and do word association with you. I'm just going to give one name because I think she's been. I have a personal story of Janet Marie Smith.
Oh.
Do you know Janet well?
Lovely. My word association is lovely.
Yeah. In the media world of whatever I'm calling myself these days, my wife, all play-by-play announcer. Now I just say, hey, just tell people I'm a podcaster, or don't even tell them I'm doing anything right now. But years ago when we moved to Connecticut, I was familiar with her, but she was willing to come on a podcast. So we're going back to 2010. We're going back 14 years. At that point in time with Janet, invited her on, had her on. I said, look, I don't know when it is. I said, but I'll be the first person to sign whatever I need to sign to say you belong in the Baseball Hall of Fame. That's 14 years ago. So go back 2 years ago. It's my first opportunity. We had talked on and off just every once in a while. But I said, hey, I'm coming to Los Angeles. I'm doing my first ever play-by-play event, ESPN Radio, Dodgers, Padres. And I'm just sharing this so you can share more on Janet, and you'll probably just say that's Janet. Mm-hmm. So we did a Saturday. I was there for the Friday night game against the Padres, and she was willing to meet with me. And she gave me a tour, like she probably did anybody else, of Dodger Stadium. but she just took like 45 minutes with me, well before first pitch. And I saw things from the Brooklyn Dodger days and all this, and just the tremendous history, and just the time for her to take out of for me, and how many other people she had done that for, just resonates with me. And I always like to share it with somebody who knows her better than I do, because you probably have 100 of those stories.
Janet Marie Smith is the epitome of grace, of class, of intelligence, of power, like a powerful woman who doesn't come off as powerful, because she's humble. And what she has accomplished is Hall of Fame worthy. I mean, she is really, look at Fenway Park. And again, she hasn't been part of Fenway Park's refurbishing in quite a few years now, but she set the tone, she set the stage, and she started the groundwork for making a 100-year-old ballpark. I mean, a little less at the time, but making it look like it's always looked like that. And what she, Camden Yards, I mean, and Dodger Stadium and Atlanta, like, she is just accomplished so much, but is so humble and always willing to help, whether she knows you or not. So she's definitely a woman that I think almost all of my women colleagues at the Red Sox have looked up to for a long time.
I'm glad. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that as well. Do you have a final day at the ballpark?
In theory, I cleaned out my office mostly last week. But in theory, I'm an advisor till the end of the year. So.
Okay. So you'll be, let's say you're still in official capacity, like you said, through the end of the year. What was it like last week? What was it? What do you think it'll be like in a couple of months? I
think in a couple of months, it'll be over. Cleaning out my office was totally fine. I wasn't super nostalgic over all the things. It was kind of a pain in the ass, to be honest, because I'm messy. If you could see it, I am not a neat person. And I'm a pack rat. So I've built up a lot of stuff. I have a lot of stuff. So that was sort of like mindless and whatever, but I had written like some heartfelt handwritten notes to some of my colleagues, and I went and dropped one off to my boss. And he was in the next office over, and he wasn't in the office at the time. And so I dropped the note off, and I turned around and started walking out of his office, and like this flood of emotion came over me. And it turns out it was partially because of him in his office. He is the head of partnership. So he has sponsorship stuff from 20 years, like all over his office, but he hasn't always had that office. My old boss, Bresh, who brought me on in the first place, who was like everything to me, that was his office. And so when I turned and started walking out, I was like, oh. And then, so I went back to my office, I like got it together, and then I was like, it's time for me to go home. And so and I left, and I actually ran into my boss who I gave the card to, and he started telling me like, wow, that was such a nice note. And he says to me, this is kind of sad. And I was like, yep, I got to go. And I turned around and left. So, but other than that, it's sad. And everyone says bittersweet. I mean, it's time for me to go though. Like I am very comfortable with this next, not that I know necessarily what the next phase of my life is, but I'm comfortable bringing this one to a close. 25 seasons seems like a nice round number. My kids are in different places in their lives. And so I am very comfortable, but it's sad, but it's nice to know that I will still be in touch with, and hopefully the nature of what's next for me, I hope will involve a lot of people that I've known anyway. So. Well,
I'm a huge fan of the show West Wing. I'm not sure if you're familiar or not.
I didn't really watch. I mean, I'm familiar with it, but I didn't really watch it.
There was the phrase "What's next?" When something was, okay, we're at the end of that road. What's next? And I was going to ask you that. Whatever it is, I wish you all the best, and I'll keep looking at your LinkedIn page to see what's next. I know I went in a lot of different directions. I appreciate you humoring me of the different roads we went down, but congratulations, a tip of the cap. And I'm so glad I was there in the pregame and to see you throw out that ceremonial first pitch. Then they talked about it. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Wait,
and again, congratulations.
Before we go, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I can see on the side, it says like on today's show. I see 3 question marks after Kevin Millar. I got to know. So
Millar's comment, and we really didn't go down the road with the Netflix doc too much, but Millar's comments on EEI radio when he was asked about, do you want Nomar or Manny?
The Dan Patrick interview.
Or Alex Rodriguez, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the Dan Patrick
And
interview.
yeah, and all those different things that were going on there. And Millar present day of like, yeah, he kind of had a reason to be upset. They had the conversation afterwards and it was a lot. And, they did go to spring training together. So kind of, what was Millar saying of, okay, present day? I thought maybe there was going to be a little bit more to it in that sense.
I don't know. I don't know. It made me laugh out loud. There's a few moments. There's plenty of moments in the 3-part series that really made me laugh out loud. And when it showed what Millar said to Dan Patrick, and then, Millar's doing his Millar thing. And then Colin Barnacle, the interviewer, followed up and said, or Millar said, I answered the question I was asked. And then Colin Barnacle says, well, the question you were asked for this. And he's
yeah, it was, and
that's and he's like, oh
yeah,
oh,
that was my
that's my
three. That's my 3 question marks.
It's very Millar. It just Hawk,
being a minor league guy, back when it was WGN and Hawk Harrelson was on White Sox broadcasts, and it'd be on in the manager's room, and he would call my room and say, "Can he say that on the air?" Millar to me is going down the road of being the next Hawk Harrelson, because it's like, well, he said it, so it's allowed to be out on air. But I mean, he doesn't hold back, and he's such a personality.
It was just such a Millar moment that I was like, of course he didn't know.
As genuine as they get, it seems. So, again, thank you. I thought you were going to say I spelled your name wrong, and I don't think.
Oh, that would really have some problems.
But again, thank you. Appreciate you taking the time. Wish you all the best with you individually and with the family.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Pam Kenn, 24 plus years. It'll be 25 years with the Boston Red Sox organization. Appreciate her for taking some time with Locked On Red Sox. Yeah, we've gone long. Craig Takalo, I'll just say, great Francona story. Yeah, it was. What a great guest. Very enjoyable. Hey, Craig, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Pam was terrific. Since we've gone long, take a break, wrap things up. Couple of thoughts. Again, we've stayed away from present day of what the Red Sox are. Gabby's going to do plenty of that when she comes back from being a newlywed. She can be a newlywed for a while with her new husband. But just great. I've had fun doing this. We got another great interview coming up tomorrow. I'm going to share that with you next. Locked On Red Sox. All right, Locked On Red Sox, presented by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which does make getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down as you get closer to the first pitch. Game Time features seat views. What are your seat views? Well, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you purchase. And with Game Time, you also get the lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference. Terms do apply. Download the Game Time app today. Create your account. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms do apply there. Again, the account, create it on Game Time, right? Create your account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Game Time. Last minute tickets and lowest prices guaranteed. All right. Again, thank you to Pam Kenn. Terrific. She's, more of the person I'm talking with, less of me. Great back and forth. Went down a lot of different roads. The Terry Francona story was terrific from Pam. I have not gotten into that in Terry Francona's book. I've shared that multiple times. So just a couple of thoughts. Episode 2, Netflix document, the comeback 2004 World Series and the Red Sox. Spring training. Terry Francona in his book with Dan Shaughnessy, visiting with Manny Ramirez, and Manny Ramirez basically saying, "Hey, I know you want to try to get me to like you. Basically, you stay over there, I'll stay over here. We're in our lanes." In Terry Francona's book, he does share that later in spring training or later in that 2004 season, it was Manny Ramirez coming to him and saying, "Hey, hit me wherever." Basically saying, you've earned my approval, you've earned my respect, things along that line. Nomar Garciaparra felt betrayed by Kevin Millar in that interview. Pam mentioned it with Dan Patrick. Terry had history. Terry Francona had history with Nomar Garciaparra prior to him becoming the manager in 2004 of the Red Sox organization. It was interesting that they touched on, was Nomar hurt in spring training? Was it something? Jed Hoyer had some interesting comments. But basically, Terry Francona saying to Nomar Garciaparra and to his players over the years as a manager, are you coming to the ballpark because of the team, or are you coming because of you? Sometimes you forget that it was Pedro Martinez last year, and he was prominent in episode number 2 of the comeback Red Sox 2004. Big Papi had David Ortiz had an interesting one on Jason Varitek, basically saying that when Varitek talked, and it wasn't often, but he knew as a leader and as the captain of the team, when he Big Papi basically saying when that guy Jason Varitek when he talked, people were going to listen. And then there was the whole, the A-Rod, Jason Varitek. They both get ejected at Fenway Park. Terry Francona goes into, the deep of, hey, Theo Epstein, Brian Cashman, Joe Torre, Terry Francona, other officials, umpires out on the field for a day game at Fenway. And basically they're going to postpone the game. Terry Francona goes into the locker room and his guys are raring to go. And they played. The fight where Alex Rodriguez is F you, and Varitek kind of saying, I might have allowed you to get away with one. I wasn't going any farther. Varitek addressing, why would he take the mask off? That was always a thing and a talking topic. Why and Tanyan Sturtz, I've heard stories over the years, one of those guys. He's going to be at the front of it. He got involved, and I forgot this, with Gabe Kapler. He ended up with blood around his ear. Trot Nixon then got involved with that as well. It was great to see Trot Nixon in episode 2 of the comeback, and then Bill Miller winning it. And Joe Castiglione coming on board there. And it was his first, and he said it, it might have very well, Miller's home run to win it, might have been his first, can you believe it? And then Millar saying, kind of capping that day off at Fenway with the comeback win. They fell behind early against Bronson Arroyo. And Arroyo had some great thoughts of, hey, I'm told, I'm asleep. Everyone else is getting ready to leave the ballpark. I need an hour to get ready. I had 30 minutes, and he got roughed up early on. But Millar saying, basically, we went 2-0 that day. We won the fight. We won the game. And then as the episode is ending, and as I said, if you haven't watched episode number 1, you'll cry in the final 10 minutes. You may shed a tear in the final minutes of episode number 2 as well. Because Jerry Remy is there on the broadcast, basically sharing his thoughts on Nomar Garciaparra getting traded to the Chicago Cubs in a 4-team deal. And everyone killing Theo Epstein for bringing back Orlando Cabrera and Doug Mankiewicz. Again, I'm not spoiling anything here. And Mankiewicz, day of the deal, coming from the Twins clubhouse to the Red Sox clubhouse on the other side of the ballpark. But Theo got destroyed for that trade. It ends up working out. And it ends episode 2. It covers Red Sox pursuit of Alex Rodriguez, Theo Epstein, Jed Hoyer with Alex Rodriguez. I'm not going to give you Theo's line on that meeting at 2 a.m. in New York City at Alex Rodriguez's apartment, but Theo's got a couple of good lines on Alex Rodriguez there. And it ends episode 2 with Nomar Garciaparra being dealt. We went long, and I don't know if I'm going to get beaten up on or not, but we'll find out. But this was a great episode. And if you just on the podcast, if you enjoyed that interview, thank you for tuning in. And again, the Locked On Red Sox podcast available wherever you get your podcasts. 2 more minutes just to tell you what we've got coming up, because I'm excited about it. Pam Kenn, again, Red Sox Senior Vice President, Community, Alumni, and Player Relations. Thanks to her for joining us here on Locked On Red Sox. Tomorrow, Jeff Iaquesa, the President and General Manager of the Portland Sea Dogs. He's going to join us as we go live on the Locked On Red Sox YouTube channel at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Monday, we're going to visit with Jemai Webster, sideline reporter on NESN. Jemai confirmed last night. He's going to be on with us on Monday. TBA, whether it's going to be noon start or 12:30. But again, you can go back. Ian Brown, outstanding earlier in the week. Michael Lynch, friend from SeamHeads.com, joining us as well earlier in the week. And Devin Marrero, NESN analyst, joining us on Tuesdays. Those are archived on the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and also on the Locked On Red Sox YouTube channel as well. So Jemai Webster Monday, Chad Epperson, now in the Dominican Republic and coaching Winter League ball, something he's always wanted to do. I know Epi from back in my year plus in Wilmington, Delaware, as a Red Sox affiliate in the Carolina League. Chad Epperson is going to join us next Tuesday from the Dominican, and we're working on getting a Red Sox minor league player who's currently playing in the Arizona League. Don't know who that player is yet, but we're going to hopefully have that late next week as well. That is a wrap. That is a wrap. Hopefully I don't get reprimanded for going long here on Locked On Red Sox. As always, we thank Gabby Hurlbut for the opportunity to do this. Again, that's wrapped on our latest Locked On Red Sox. Again, for your next listen, check out Locked On MLB podcast. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has you covered every single day. Again, our thanks to Pam Kenn, 25 years in the front office for the Boston Red Sox. When she writes the book, when the book is published, I'll be in line to make the first purchase in a bookstore or online as well, wherever you purchase your books these days. Back at it on Friday again, a Locked On Red Sox YouTube channel with the Locked On Red Sox podcast again, wherever you are available. We are on it Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Locked On Podcast Network, your team, your Red Sox, every day.